All right, I got 6:31. I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. Ask for roll call, please.
Here.
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 Here. Here.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have minutes from our regular meeting June 10 and special meeting on June 24.
I move for approval of the regular meeting minutes from June 10th and the special meeting minutes of June 24th.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then to approve the regular meeting minutes on June 10 and special meeting minutes on June 24th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not, same sign. It'd be a long meeting if I do that. Recognition of visitors. Thank you all for being here in person, even on a nice, sunny, somewhat humid, hotter day. And those of you that are watching from the YouTube channel as well. So thank you for your attention tonight. Nobody signed up for public comments, so we will go ahead and look for a motion to approve the agenda.
Also move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then to adopt the agenda as written. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not, same sign. All right, moving right along. Reports by admin. 8.1, Fund 46 transfer.
All right, good evening.
I see your name on the agenda a lot this evening.
There's a lot going on in July. So every year, we're going to need to approve the transfer to Fund 46. This is something that we'll typically do in July in order to get it into the previous fiscal year. So for the 23-24 fiscal year, I'm recommending that we approve a transfer of $25,000 into the Fund 46 account.
Anybody have any questions? Otherwise, look for a motion.
I move the board approve the transfer of $25,000 from the general fund to Fund 46.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second then to transfer the money is stated. Ask for a roll call vote, please.
Marge Jorgensen.
Yes.
John Kraus.
Yes.
Mary Moon.
Yes.
Lisa Panzer.
Yes.
Chad Krieger.
Yes.
Heather Schultz.
Yes.
Joanne Vazisky.
Yes.
Isaac Brooks.
Yes.
Just keep rolling.
All right, so next on the agenda is the 24-25 preliminary budget and tax levy adoption and approval. So I do have some slides for this here tonight. So the preliminary budget is just the budget that we will go through. The board will approve it. It's not the final budget. That'll come in October, but this budget will allow us to start spending in the 24-25 fiscal year. Just a little recap on the budget calendar. So DPI issued the equalization aid estimates on the 1st. The board will hopefully approve and adopt the preliminary budget tonight. In September, I'll bring to you the cash flow borrowing resolution, and we'll get the third Friday enrollment count. And then in October is where a lot of the financial pieces happen for school districts. We'll get the equalized property value, we'll get the private school voucher information, and we'll have the hearing and adopt the original budget and certify the tax levy at the end of October. Just some revenue impacts for next year, or this current 24-25 year. So we're in the second year of the biennial budget for the state. They will start working on the new biennial in January and hopefully have that to us before July of next year. I don't know if that will happen for sure, but that's the idea of the process for that. So we're operating the second year of the current biennial. In this current biennial, we're going to receive an extra $325 per member. The revenue ceiling will go up about $325 to $11,346. We're going to see an increase in special ed aid to 33.3%, which is about $300,000 as opposed to the 23-24 year. And our per pupil categorical aid is staying the same at $742 per pupil. The revenue limit is anticipated to decrease by about $98,000. Declining enrollment exemption of almost $900,000 this year due to a decrease of 31 students. So we lost 31 students from last year, projected-wise. But the 3-year average, which is what our revenue limit is based on, we're going to see a decrease of 79 from last year's 3-year average. We're currently budgeting no increase in the number of voucher students for private schools, but there is an increase per student in that dollar amount. It comes out to be about 3.29% as an aid deduction, but then that we're allowed to increase our revenue limit to cover that deduction. Other revenue limit impacts. Our equalization aid is projected to increase by over $700,000. That's based on estimates from the forecasting model that I use. While gain in aid is positive for tax implications, a big part of this aid is our equalized value has risen substantially since 2022. And as our pupils have declined slightly, then we're paying more per pupil. So we're seeing a 13.23% increase. The spring 2024 debt defeasance that we did in June, this will impact our aid for next year as well. And it's not a gain in revenue for the district, but just a change in the funding source. So we're just less taxes, more aid from the state, less local taxes. A few talking points on the aid piece. So the July aid estimate, it comes out on the 1st. It's fairly publicized, I would say, and mostly because it's a really slow time in school, anything, but especially school finance, when this comes out, so it receives a lot of attention. It probably more than it deserves because it is just an estimate. It's based on everyone's budget numbers. So if your budget numbers aren't good or accurate, then the aid estimate is not accurate. So these larger school districts' budget numbers really control these aid estimates. So that's what was released. Excuse me, our aid estimate came out, that was publicized, came out to be $25,248,000, and the estimate that I have based on our forecast model was $25,254,000, so we're within about $5,000 of the estimate. The other pieces of the equalization aid is the state budget. This year increased the school levy tax credit. That's something that I hit on pretty hard last fall when we were setting our mill rate and how that impacts our local taxpayers. But had that been put into the equalization formula, it would have changed that revenue limit differently. So basically the current budget with that tax levy credit, it favors taxpayers in the high property value school districts. The state budget, the equalization aid allocation for 24-25 is approximately $225 million higher than this previous year. So that should cover most of the increase allowed by the revenue limit on a per pupil basis. We've seen a lot of discussion in the news lately regarding MPS, Milwaukee Public Schools. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit tonight here. Milwaukee is going through some transition with how they're reporting and some errors in their reporting to DPI over the past several years. And they did pass a very large referendum last year. That referendum will not have any impact on our equalization aid for next year. So it could in the future, but it will not for next year. There is potential impact on the equalization aid in 24-25 related to a prior year accounting adjustment. So because Milwaukee's reporting had some errors in it, they could have to give back some of the aid they received, which will then go into the pool and be distributed among all school districts in the state. And so we would get more aid than what I'm reporting right now. Expenditures for next year. So no increases for health or dental insurance. Transportation is a 5% increase. Utility costs, we're budgeted a 5% increase. And salary, we're budgeting a 4.5% increase. The cost for property and liability insurance, I know we've discussed that recently, and I had projected 20% increase. I did get those numbers last week. We did go out to bid, and they came back with a 13.64% increase. So the preliminary budget for next year, or for the 24-25 year. So we're projecting just under $43 million in revenues, just over $43 million in expenses, with a budget balance of a deficit of $300,000 for the 24-25 year. We are carrying over $300,000 in ESSER funds into 24-25 that have to be spent by September 30th. We're not projecting a transfer to Fund 46 at this time, but we have the flexibility to do so. So that's kind of that we can dive into that at this time next year. It's not imperative that we project that right now. So as of today, with a very, very conservative budget estimate, we're looking at a $300,000 deficit. Now, I'm fairly confident that will look much better come October. So to be at $300,000 right now, I feel really good about that compared to where we were a couple months ago. I think we're in a good spot. I think that will improve, and I hope to present a balanced budget in October. But as of right now, this is what we're looking at. Just one more thing to touch on that. We are going to carry over this year. We're going to offset this balance with at least what we're projecting to be a deficit for next year. So at the end of 23-24, we will offset this $300,000 by adding that to fund balance. So again, I know we've talked about this, but if we look at this as a 2-year cycle, so 23 to 25, we're not going to lose money over those 2 years. We may have a deficit in 24-25, but we're going to offset that in 23-24. Tax levy. So on the far right column, you can see the change in the revenue limit. It's just under $100,000 for this year. Our aid went up about $700,000. Our Fund 10 levy decreased about $800,000, and our overall levy increased about $128,000, which shows a 2-cent decrease on the mill rate. This is how Beaver Dam compares to other local districts in terms of mill rate for 23-24. We're below the state average. We're at 709. The state average is 722. Below the state average and below most of the area districts. We are projecting the 707 for 24-25. I don't know what these other districts are projecting, but I would anticipate slight decreases for them as well. So I would guess that we would be, at worst case, in the middle of the pack for 24-25. So the recommended action for tonight is to approve and adopt the 24-25 preliminary budget as presented, including the Fund 10 tax levy of $10,836,758 and the total tax levy of $18,087,697. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Cashman? And if not, look for a motion.
I move we approve and adopt the 2024-2025 preliminary budget as presented, including the Fund 10 tax levy of $10,836,758 and the total tax levy of $18,087,697.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then to adopt the preliminary budget and tax levy. Look for roll call vote, please.
John Kraus?
Yes.
Mary Coombs?
Yes.
Lisa Danzer?
Yes.
Chad Kirby?
Yes.
Heather Schultz?
Yes.
Joanne Hiajiski?
Yes.
Isaac Dornfeld?
Yes.
Marge Jordan?
Yes.
So that moves us on to 8.3, prospective referendum discussion. I'm going to have Mr. Cashman start out with some summary presentation slides, and then open up to the board for further discussion and a possible motion for forward movement.
Okay, so these slides were shared at the June Operations Committee, but just to reflect on them. So the current scenario for a potential referendum that was shared in the survey that was out to the public this past spring highlighted a $107 million referendum, and the figures that were given in relation to that were based on 5.25% to 5.5% interest rate. That included $87 million for a middle school, $13 million for Washington, and $7 million for district-wide improvements, had an estimated mill rate impact of $1.20. The board had asked for some other scenarios in terms of how we could, potentially break up that borrowing. So a two-question scenario for a referendum with $87 million and $20 million borrowed separately with two separate questions, that would have the same mill rate impact of $1.20 if both were borrowed. The $87 million impact would be 77 cents, and the $20 million impact would be 43 cents. This slide just kind of illustrates how interest rates can affect the mill rate projections. So 107 million at 4.5% instead of 5.5% would drop that mill rate impact to $1. So it's a 20 cent decrease on the mill rate. Now, I would never project this right now because we're too far out. There's too many variables that can go into it, but just to show you what 1% can do, it's significant. So, and the 5.25% to 5.5% is conservative. We're not at that. Like right as of today, we'd be closer to the 4.5% in terms of borrowing. But again, a year from now, that could look very different. So, and the final scenario would be what would $99 million look like? So 99 million at the 5.25% to 5.5% interest rate would have a mill rate impact of about $1.03. This is just the district-wide improvements piece and the breakdown of that. So the 7 million would include 1.5 million to update playgrounds, areas, and equipment. That would give all playgrounds would have one fully accessible campus and/or playground on each at every location. 1.5 million to improve student drop-off and pickup and traffic flow. That could include, just examples could include a change to Lincoln or Prairie View and how that flow looks. I know it's busy at certain times of the day. 1 million for improving access for community rec. 1.5 million to improve site safety and security, and 1.5 million to improve ADA accessibility, which could include pathways, graded correctly surfaces, and more paved surfaces around the district. So are there any questions on the mill rate impacts and how that could change or what it currently looks like for the dollar amounts that we've been discussing?
My only question is, can you just maybe tell us, as far as that, what our projected percentage, our borrowing percentages are? Are there any scenarios that would cause that to either go up or down traditionally?
I would not expect it to be higher than the 5.5%. Obviously, it could happen, but I would not expect it. 5.5% is pretty conservative. I know there was a school district that borrowed this spring for 3.5%, so we're considerably higher. That's lower. I don't think we're at 3.5% anymore today, but I wouldn't anticipate it going over 5.5%.
And Ryan, in the 99 scenario, you indicate that there would be things cut in every area, but essentially 99 just eliminates the $7 million worth of extra stuff and just requires like $1 million to be found probably within the building of the middle school, correct?
it would definitely eliminate the district-wide improvements, and then, yeah.
Okay.
You know, we had discussion in committee and we asked to see some of these other numbers, but any of those things that we don't do now are things that we're going to need to try to find money within our budget to do later. And the budget has been so tight and the cost continues to go up. So $1 million project, if we don't do it now, we do it in 5 years, is no longer $1 million project. It's, you know, depending on interest and costs, a lot more than that. So I really think that anything that we have listed in here is something that has been identified pretty much as necessary and in the best interest of children. There's not things that we're padding out, things that we're looking for. These are things we know need to be done. And personally, I feel that any money we spend on the middle school to try to limp it along and postpone a decision or postpone a question is not money well spent. I just feel like, you know, it's deferring a hard question when we just really sometimes need to ask a hard question, so.
Yeah, I agree, Joanne, too. I just, you know, that all this stuff's gonna have to be done with at some point in time, and then this, to, like you said, LinkedIn middle school on, that, in my opinion, is money well spent, and and it's probably a safe bet to say that the longer we push this off, the more it's gonna cost everyone. And I guess if, my personal opinion is if the board's gonna move forward with this, I'd rather ask for it all and see what we can get done. I mean, we've seen the numbers are gonna be close either way. But I think long-term, both financially and for the future of the district down the road, I do think that we need to ask for everything and move forward with a referendum this fall.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to, you know, the 7 million, you know, breakdown there. If you look at that, I mean, the majority of all that is really safety related. Like safety of playground, safety of drop-off sites, right? Overall, that's security and safety measures, and then ADA accessibility. So it's not like we're just throwing stuff in there, right? It's all stuff that we've identified that we feel needs to be done from a safety and security standpoint. So I also would favor moving forward with the full amount.
You know, and the other thing that we gotta really think about too is we got other buildings down the road that are gonna need some attention. So if this gets pushed back, you know, if we decide not to move forward with anything right now, that's just gonna compact and compound everything later on down the road. And again, that's not good for the district, and it's not good for our kids or, you know, our constituents or anything else either. So I think we need to be proactive.
Ryan, what is the current interest rate on the high school referendum debt?
I would have to look that up for you.
Okay. And then, do we have other debt defeasance opportunities to be able to attempt to cover the 7 million in a different way within our existing budget through debt defeasance or other budgeting items within our current annual budget over time?
Debt defeasance wouldn't necessarily cover the 7 million. We could potentially, if we weren't to include it in a referendum and we were to try to cover it out of our operational budget, it would have to be done in very small pieces over the course of a long time. I don't see that extra money in there right now to do $7 million worth of project in the near future.
Okay. Just confirming, because obviously that's something that we had done in the past
Sure.
when it came to Prairie View and some of the other things that we had taken care of within our own operating budget. But I know obviously things being extremely tight now, that's
Okay.
not necessarily something that can be covered.
So you're looking at borrowing that, like taking out a loan to do the project and then paying back the loan through the operating budget. So if we did that, obviously that takes away the dollars from our standard operating budget. And that would be a big liability for us to just continue to operate.
Okay.
I was grateful for you doing the work, though, to see the difference that it made. That's important to know, and I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
That work.
And I still go back and I think to myself, like, it still shows that we've been really good stewards from a financial standpoint. When I look around the state, especially this last year and in previous years, in most recent history, you've seen a lot of operational referendums out there. And the fact that you're not seeing, at this point here, an operational referendum from us, I think shows that we're really good stewards from a financial standpoint. But when it comes to, old and aging buildings and the replacement of a building, that's just beyond our ability to be able to handle ourselves. And I think most people can appreciate that.
I'd just like to thank you, Ryan, for all the work you've done on this presentation. And, when push comes to shove, it shows that the difference in the estimated mill rate increase, if you break it down or not, is going to be about the same. And for that reason, I say we go for the full amount that we've talked about for doing the middle school plus the other things for the rest of the school district.
Anybody else have any other comments? Otherwise, entertain somebody to put a motion forward.
I move the board proceed with planning for a facilities referendum this fall that includes a new middle school, necessary improvements, including a small-scale addition to Washington Elementary School, and district-wide facility needs focused on site safety, ADA access, and community recreation, and in doing so, direct the administration to bring forward resolution language for the board to consider adopting on or before the board business meeting in August.
Second.
All right, if there is no further discussion and we have a motion and a second, I would just ask for an all in favor. Say aye.
Aye.
And those not, same sign. All right, unanimously, you are going to bring us back some language.
We're going to bring back a resolution.
So are we gonna do that at the August meeting, or do we wanna try to get it done before?
It can happen, so in reviewing just with council as far as timing about a prospective resolution, as it relates to something that would wind up obviously on a ballot fall, the August date does work. If the board happens to have an opportunity to do it before that, it certainly wouldn't hurt, but the timing works well for August.
I mean, you're only talking, what, a 2-week period of time? I mean, because if we were gonna have a special meeting, I mean, we typically would do it during committees, right?
Right.
The other thing is that, I mean, based on an agenda standpoint, there is a possibility we may not have committee meetings this month, and I don't want to just throw another meeting just 2 weeks before the board meeting if it's not going to substantially give us an advantage. And so talking with Mark about that, I think we'll just probably look for that language at the August board meeting.
I think the board's action provides clarity as to what they want brought back as a resolution, so that also helps us from a planning and communication standpoint. Because one of the advantages, obviously, if we were to move it up, would be to be able to communicate some things a little earlier, but there's certainly enough here, I think, tonight that we'd be able to communicate clearly to stakeholders and the public about the direction, the formal direction of the board moving forward. And then the resolution is what then would obviously trigger something actually being on a ballot. But I think, based on the conversations I've had, that we're in a good spot with the timing that we have laid out right now. But if there's another reason that the board's, called to be together prior to that date, we could certainly do it at that time as well.
All right. We'll move forward to reports from Board of Education, starting with Operations Committee.
A meeting of the Operations Committee of the Board of Education was held on June 24th at the Educational Service Center beginning at 7:28 p.m. Board members present were Isaac Dornfeld, Marge Jorgensen, John Kraus Jr., and Joanne Tyjeski. The committee reviewed the board's standing committee guidelines, and election of chairperson, Marge Jorgensen was selected as the committee chairperson. Dr. White, Director of Human Resources, presented preliminary staff handbook and job description updates. Proposed changes for certified staff include Act 20 language, nighttime activities, OPEB language clarification, sick time retirement payout, workers' compensation protocol language, and extra duty pay updates. Proposed changes for support staff include district closure day language, sick time retirement payout, and workers' compensation protocol language. She reviewed the changes to job descriptions that are in need of updating to provide clarification on duties and responsibilities, and the changes will be presented for action at the July regular board meeting. So we will hear about that later in this meeting. Mr. Cashman, Director of Business Services, provided a presentation on lunch prices and student fees for 2024-25. He recommended no change to student meal prices. The district will ensure that families eligible for assistance complete an application and will encourage families to become current on their meal accounts. He recommended a small increase to milk prices and staff specialty meals, which have not been increased in a few years. Milk prices will increase to 50 cents and staff specialty lunches will increase to $5. He also recommended no increase in student fees for 2024-25. These recommendations will be presented to the board for action at the July regular business meeting. Mr. Cashman presented prospective referendum financials. The current scenario of $107 million is based on the survey with a conservative interest rate, would have an estimated mill rate impact of $1.20. Another option for a two-question scenario with one question for $87 million for a new middle school and one question for $20 million for the cost of Washington Elementary School renovations and district-wide improvements. The mill rate impact for this option would be the same, $1.20. An option for the $107 million referendum at an aggressive interest would have a mill rate impact of $1, but aggressive interest rates are not recommended due to market variables that can occur. There is also an option for $99 million that would require adjustment to all phases of the project. The mill rate impact for that option would be $1.03. He provided a breakdown of district-wide improvements and shared the cost of not pursuing the referendum. Any loans taken out to finance construction would come from the operating budget. Committee members discussed the options and considerations. And Mr. Cashman, again, provided an update on the 2023-2024 budget. He reviewed year-end projections, a breakdown of Fund 27, revenues, expenses, and Fund 46. He reviewed the current realities of the 2024-2025 budget, which included information on the district's revenue limit authority, ESSER funds, CPI, health insurance rates, and other expenses and shared costs. The next meeting for the Operations Committee is scheduled for July 22nd.
I believe you got a couple of motions you're gonna bring
Right.
forward, and Nicole's gonna
We'd
probably
like
help you out.
to have Nicole come forward to talk about the staff handbook.
Yeah, you summarized it quite well, Marge, thank you. There's a handbook updates one-sheeter in your packet along with the handbook red lines. We talked about a number of things at operations. At this time, I'm seeking no proposed changes to the overall employee handbook. Appendix A, certified staff, would be the retirement sick time payout language, workers' compensation language, and Act 20 language. Appendix B, for support staff, would be the same retirement sick time payout language, the same workers' compensation language, and district closure clarification. Appendix C would match Appendix B. And Appendix D for substitutes would be no proposed changes. So if you have any questions about any of those changes at this time, I'm happy to hear them.
Can you just give us a summary of what the sick time payout is that we're possibly going to implement for our staff?
Yes, we'd be looking at $50 a day for any sick time that is not paid out or used upon retirement, and in order to be eligible, you have to qualify for our retirement benefits. So oftentimes at the end of the school year, we acknowledge people who are retiring from education that either qualify for our benefits or they don't, but we honor them as a Beaver Dam retiree. In order to be eligible for this, you have to qualify for all of our retirement benefits. So those would be capped at 100 days for each employee. And they'd be paid out within 90 days of retirement.
Yeah, right on. I think that's I mean, I like the idea that we can do that for our staff. I think it's just another way that we show that, you know, we're dedicated to them and willing to do what we can.
Any other questions?
I move the board approve the employee handbook, appendices, and job descriptions updates as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then for staff handbook and job description updates. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those not, same sign. And Marge, you want to bring that other motion forward?
As I had mentioned in reading the Operations Committee meeting minutes, we talked, Mr. Cashman had provided a presentation regarding lunch prices and student meal prices. And so I move that the board, excuse me, the board not increase student meal prices or fees for the 2024-2025 school year, but approve increasing meal prices to $5 for staff specialty meals and increasing the price of a carton of milk by 5 cents.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then for 2024-25 meal prices and student fees is motioned. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those not, same sign. All right. And right now, we have on the agenda for committee meetings, that will be determined here shortly, and we might cancel those based on agenda items.
By the end of the week, we should know.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, teaching and learning.
A meeting of the Teaching and Learning Committee of the Board was held on June 24th at the ESC at 5:30. Committee members present were Mary Kuntz, Lisa Panzer, and Heather Schultz. Members absent were Maria Mason. The committee received the board's standing committee guidelines to review. Lisa Panzer was selected as the committee chairperson. Dr. Meyer, the Director of Teaching and Learning, and Ms. Sponholz, the Director of Student Services, reported on procedural updates and planning for the 2024-2025 school year. Dr. Meyer reviewed the teaching and learning focus and overall focus areas, the professional learning plan, and the academic standards for 24-25, which the board adopts annually. He highlighted the implementation of Act 20 and provided an overview of the district's curriculum course guides and materials and explained the board annually adopts the curriculum utilizing the standards with the understanding that there are continued processes for development. He shared the support plan for students who may be at risk and explained that the board annually adopts a plan to support students who may be at risk of not graduating with their peer group. He provided highlights of the long-range plan for library services development and an overview of the Achievement Gap Reduction Program. Ms. Sponholz explained that the board will receive the annual recommendation to adopt the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction's Special Education Model Forms and Policies Procedures Manual at the July regular board meeting. She presented the annual health service report and annual seclusion restraint report for 23-24, which it will be presented for action at the July regular board meeting. Dr. Meyer provided information about the middle school book club and the process for selecting books. The district is looking to move the approval of the books from the building level to the district level. An advisory committee will be created to provide community input on selections offered at the middle school level. The input will be used to affirm and modify any selections. Student participation in the book club is voluntary. He reviewed committee considerations and the timeline. Our next committee meeting is scheduled for the 22nd unless it would be canceled. And as an outcome of our learning, we do need to adopt via motion the items that we discussed during Teaching and Learning's committee. So I move the board approve the procedural updates and plan for the 2024-2025 school year as required by policy and statute. The administration of the Beaver Dam Unified School District has the authority to make non-holistic modifications to best meet the needs of our schools, staff, and students through continuous improvement processes. This approval includes the professional learning plan, annual reading curriculum evaluation course guides and resources, at-risk plan, library services plan, AGR report, adoption of the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction's special services, our special education model forms and procedures manual for the 2024-2025 school year, health services report, and seclusion and restraint report.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then. As for, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those not, same sign.
All right. And then we do also have an annual declaration parent notice of student academic standards. So school boards are required by state statute to identify the student academic standards adopted by the school board and that will be in effect for the current school year. The district uses the Wisconsin state standards and the highlights in the areas of language arts, math, science, and social studies for grades K-12 and other locally designed standards in all other areas and grade levels. So I move the board approve the use of the student academic standards as presented for use in designing, delivering, and evaluating curriculum.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for that as well. All in favor, say aye.
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 All those not, same sign. All right, thank you very much, Lisa. And that moves us to 9.3, board engagement. So I'll open it up to the board for any engagement opportunities the board would like to share out.
I did go to the high school musical last weekend, I think it was. Very, very good talent that we have at that level. That was a lot of fun. And then the high school did have some different basketball scrimmages. My son happens to play basketball. And so that was kind of fun to watch the kids. They just play hard all the time. Doesn't matter if it really counts.
Yep. Yep. Anybody else? Few less engagement opportunities in schools now.
Exactly.
Right? All right, with that, I'll open it up for anybody who would like to recognize group activity or person.
Well, I also went to the area high school musical, and I know that there are a lot of staff members that help with that, particularly Mark Lefevre, I think directs that every year. And wow, that's an undertaking. So I just want to recognize him for his extra effort on that.
Anybody else?
As I had stated before, I want to recognize Ryan and Nicole for all the work they've done on the things that we've talked about here. It's been important that we get feedback from everybody, and putting it together in a way that's understandable to all of us is very important, and I thank you for that.
Mark?
We got a few briefly, I believe, in between the time we last met formally and now, the annual Children's Radiothon was held, so I just want to commend and thank the radio station, all the partners that participated in the John Moser Annual Children's Radiothon, because the money that they raise funds for goes towards nonprofit organizations in our community that help our students and our families. So I'd like to thank them for that effort. Shout out to BDUSD for their summer programming that they have. A couple of nice opportunities coming up later this week, and then I believe the week after that will involve a number of our kids as well as kids in the area. So I'd like to thank them, and then also other just youth-based programs throughout the community, a lot going on in the summer, whether it's through the city and it's sports related, or whether it's through a 4-H or groups getting, kind of gearing up for fair next month. Also wanted to shout out the youth wrestling organization in Beaver Dam. They were key partners with a very large statewide freestyle and Greco-Roman tournament that was hosted in our field house, which sounds like now will be kind of an annual state thing in the summer potentially. So really huge event, drew a lot of people to the area. So and those youth wrestling families were key cogs in that. So I would like to thank them.
All right. With that,
I'll move that the board recess into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, paren 1, paren C, concerning employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which a governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to discuss specific employees and employee groups.
Second.
all right, we've been motion and a second to move into closed session. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
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 All right, we'll move into closed session and reconvene after we're done. All right, we are back in open session. Turn my page over. 12.1.
There are several resignations on the agenda tonight for your consideration.
I move the board approve the resignations as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the resignations as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those not, same sign. Okay.
There is one leave of absence for your consideration tonight.
I move the board approve the leave of absence as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the leave of absence. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those not, same sign.
There are 3 appointments for your consideration tonight. Tanner Adams, 5th grade teacher for Lincoln Elementary School. Heidi Gottfried, 5th grade teacher for Jefferson Elementary School. And Michael Kositsky, English teacher at the high school.
I move the board approve the appointments as presented.
Second.
All right, motion and a second then to approve the appointments as presented. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 And Nicole, before you run away, how many do we have, how many openings? Okay, how many openings do we have left?
We have a math support teacher position at elementary. We have 4th grade at Lincoln. And then we have 2 special ed vacancies at elementary. That would be Prairie View and Jefferson.
Okay.
For middle school, we need English, special ed, and science, potentially math, but if I get to work tomorrow, maybe that one we wrap up. And then high school science.
Okay.
All right. On to, whoops, sorry. Skipped one. 12.4, we have board policy update.
Board policy update, all right. In your board packet, you have a brief regarding a new Title IX policy as well as updates to the existing Title IX policy. So a little bit of background, our district currently has a Title IX policy in place. It's policy number 2266. Under updated federal requirements, that policy and its associated practices will only apply to applicable Title IX situations prior to August 1st of 2024. By August 1st of 2024, all educational institutions receiving federal dollars, includes us, must have an updated Title IX policy in place that will address prospective issues moving forward. The final release and directions from this actually came out in the middle of June. We're not too far from the middle of June right now. We work with Neola on the updated policy, the new one, which would be policy 2264, that will eventually replace policy 2266. We got a 0 in there somewhere, but that's okay. Keep in mind that both will be on the books for statute of limitations reasons for the foreseeable future, and because Title IX issues arising or having originated on or before July 31st, 2024 will fall under the old policy, and all others will fall under the new. Some additional information provided in that brief. The update to the existing policy is language that really just specifies the dates with which the policy that we currently have in place is effective. The new policy, as required by federal law, has new requirements that include but are not limited to, and there's a few reference points here, but all forms of sex discrimination are covered, including pregnancy, not just sex-based harassment. Complaints can be made verbally and need not be in writing. There is now one Title IX coordinator, and if there is a second, it's considered a deputy, and the lead one is ultimately in charge. The Title IX coordinator can investigate and be the decision maker as needed, instead of having different people or positions to do so. Training on the new Title IX requirements must be ready to go by August. Per law, this will become part of the onboarding process and beginning of the year in service. We have reviewed the policy changes with Neola as well as our own legal counsel, and we will have associated administrative guidelines that support the application of the policy. So, asking that you consider adopting the new Title IX policy as presented, as well as the updates to our existing Title IX policy in accordance with the federal requirements. Quick caveat, because of the fact that I'm asking you to adopt a new policy in the first reading, you would then see this again in August as part of our policy adoption policy. So basically, adopting the new policy puts it in play for a month, essentially. And then if the board does not take action to approve it again in August, then it basically sunsets out, because it always takes two presentations to the board for basically that formal longstanding adoption. But, so you'll see it again. I'll talk much less, but you'll see it again in August.
Curious to know, I got a question about this.
Yep.
So, that they're allowing the complaint to be made verbally and not in writing?
Mhm.
I mean, you see, it sure seems to me like there could be some issues with that. You feel confident with?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes too, I mean, how you get to in writing, you know, there, I think there's been a lot of maybe, I don't want to say benefit of the doubt, but if you're having a conversation, what they're trying to say is you can't have a conversation with an official in a school or educational setting, because this is all the way through university level, right? And that somehow that person be like, well, they never put it in writing. So this is making sure if these concerns are brought forward and, you know, they're in alignment with this, that counts. So you don't have to, right, you don't have to worry about, okay, I've really got these issues, or you found out about something and you're disclosing information, you have to go back and draft an email, right? That kind of thing. So it's just making sure that there isn't some weird barrier or catch that would prevent somebody from, you know, triggering this. So I don't have any concerns about that.
Thank you.
Yep.
I move the board adopt the new Title IX policy as presented, as well as the updates to our existing Title IX policy in accordance with the new federal requirements.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to update the board policy as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those not, same sign. All right. Payment of claims.
I move for payment and claims in the amount of $4,406,305.72.
Second.
Motion and a second then for payment of claims. Roll call vote, please. Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 And then I would look for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those not,